Hello everyone. Today I will be focusing on 18th century pocket hoops, how I made a pair, what materials I used, and the process I underwent to make them. I'm focusing on these particular 18th century pocket hoops because I intend to make a sack back dress that will require this structural undergarment underneath the dress to provide that proper 18th century silhouette that I'm seeking. I've never made a pair before, so this is my first time. I will also be hand sewing them using cotton thread, not linen, because that's what I had on hand. These will be made out of linen and reed, so those are my materials. If you want to read more about pocket hoops, click on the link below underneath and you'll find a link to my blog, which has a post on these particular set of hoops, how I went about the research, and just more information in general. I first began by enlarging the pattern using a ruler, pencil, just some basic supplies. Afterwards, I cut out the pattern pieces. I had forgotten to iron out the paper that I was using for the pattern pieces. This would have made cutting them out a lot easier since they wouldn't roll. I used a linen that I had in my fabric stash, just laid out the pieces, started pinning them, and added about 1/2 inch seam allowance using tailor's chalk. Once I had added 1/2 inch seam allowance to all the pattern pieces, I cut them out. The only pieces that I did not have a pattern for were the main side hoop pocket pieces. These are just simply rectangles that I cut to measure. I sewed twill tape to the main side hoop pocket pieces, which then creates the boning channels. This is what one final side hoop pocket piece looked like. This is another one. After I was done sewing the twill tape on the main side hoop pocket pieces, I focused on the back panels. I began by turning the raw edges over about 1/4 inch, and then I turned them again about 1/4 inch and began sewing up the raw edges. I used cotton thread instead of linen thread because cotton is what I had on hand. I also ran each thread piece through wax before actually sewing. Just made it easier to deal with knots and having the thread tangle. After I finished sewing the raw edges, I focused on the bottom pieces and added twill tape to further create additional boning channels. This was done only to the back panel pieces as the front didn't need them, so just the back pieces, and this is what they look like when they were completed. I focused on the front panel pieces. Again, it was just turning the edges over 1/4 inch, then another 1/4 inch. I did this to both the front center and the bottom. I added an oblong piece and 2 rectangular pieces to each of the side hoop pockets. This kind of gives them that almost house shape look. You can check out the pattern if you want to see the actual like dimensions of the pieces, but yeah, I just sewed those on there and then finished up the pocket hoop slit. I also did take some artistic license and added a buttonhole bar at the bottom of the slit, just so the linen wouldn't like tear. And then next came the boning. For this particular project, I decided to go with reed. I added the boning to the bottom of the back panel pieces in the channel that I'd created earlier. And then I cut off the excess boning and sewed up the ends. Here's what the pocket hoops look like after I added both the boning and that inner piece. The inner piece is essentially what creates the circular shape of the hoops, and it's what creates the tension between both the front and the back. And then afterwards, I added just the bottom piece. Here's a top view of the pocket hoops before they were pleated to the waistband. I really like how the inner pocket hoops look and just the fact that the seams are pretty clean. I pleated the top edge of the pocket hoops and then did some rough basting. This was done to both the front and the back panel pieces. Afterwards, I attached the pleated pieces to the waistband, and in this case, I used duct tape for the waistband since that's what I had on hand, and I thought it actually look nicer since it was continuous with the ties and the boning channel material. I cut out 12 pieces of twill tape of equal length, and these were the ties for both the front and the back, and I just sewed those on and my project was complete. As you can see, there are 4 ties that I did, one for the waist and then 3 lower ones as well. All the boning is right here. I did use the same tape as I did for the rest of the channels here. And there is the finished project. So right there. These are the 18th century pocket hoops that will create the structure that I need for the dress that I will eventually sew. So there we go. So this is the final product and I'm wearing it. Normally I would have done so underneath a shift, stockings, etc. But for now it's going to be under 21st century clothing. Back view. Kind of don't know what to do with your elbows. I kind of feel like you have to be more proper though. I hope you've enjoyed watching my process on making these hoops. Feel free to reach out and contact me if you have any questions or concerns. I'd love to hear about what you have to say, if this video helped you at all or inspired you to make your own. And be sure to subscribe. Just click that below so that way you can follow me on my sewing adventures.